Welcome to Mystery Cafe, your ultimate stop for gripping detective stories, chilling mysteries, and unforgettable investigations. Here, every video serves a fresh dose of suspense, shocking twists, and cases that challenge your inner detective. From classic whodunits to modern crime stories, we bring the world of mystery straight to your screen, where every clue matters and no secret stays buried for long. Before we start unraveling today's mystery, we'd love to know, where are you watching from? Globe showing Europe, Africa. Drop your country, city, or stay in the comments, and let's see how far the Mystery Cafe family reaches. Magnifying glass tilted right.
Death in the Blue Envelope. Chapter 1. A Client with Too Many Secrets. Tuesday started out grey, wet and slow, the kind of day when even the pigeons on 35th Street look like they need coffee. I was at my desk in the office, feet up, flipping through the morning mail and wondering whether Wolfe would notice if I swapped his imported hand towels for the cheap ones. The man had more linen than the Waldorf and less gratitude than a tax collector. Fritz was somewhere in the kitchen composing one of his edible sonnets, something with truffles, judging by the aroma sneaking under the door. Wolfe was upstairs with the orchids, murmuring Latin love poetry to them and pretending the rest of us didn't exist. Business had been slow all week, and I was just beginning to think about an early lunch when the doorbell buzzed. Now, Wolfe had rules about doorbells. He ignored them. That left me. I hauled myself up, ambled to the front, and opened the door. She was tall, maybe mid-30s, wrapped in a grey coat that probably cost more than my last car. Her hair was the sort of blonde that takes money to maintain, and her eyes were the colour of top-shelf gin, clear, cold, and designed for distance. She gave me the kind of polite smile women give cab drivers they don't intend to tip. "I need to see Mr. Wolfe," she said. "Sure. He's upstairs right now whispering sweet nothings to orchids. If you can outcharm a flower pot, I'll see what I can do." She didn't blink. "It's urgent." "Everything is. Step inside before the rain turns you into a watercolor." She crossed the threshold with a glide that suggested dance lessons and self-control. I took her coat, Chanel, if my nose wasn't lying, and led her into the office. She didn't sit until I told her to, which already put her one up on most clients. "What name do I put on the scorecard?" I asked. "Mrs. Edith Colburn." She took a small blue envelope from her bag and held it like it might bite. I gave it a look. "If that's a donation for the Salvation Army, you're early." "I was told to bring this," she said, "and to bring it only to Nero Wolfe." That was my cue to climb the stairs and interrupt horticultural heaven. Wolfe hates interruptions the way cats hate baths. I poked my head into the plant rooms and delivered the news. "Elegant lady downstairs, envelope, urgent." He gave a grunt that could mean anything from "send her away" to "bring beer." I took it as permission and went back down. 5 minutes later, he lumbered in, half mountain, half attitude, and dropped into his chair with the grace of a collapsing sofa. Mrs. Colburn didn't flinch. Good sign. Wolfe folded his hands on his stomach. "Madam, state your problem concisely. I abhor prefaces." She placed the envelope on his desk like a bomb and said, "I received this a week ago." Inside was one sentence. "Your husband was murdered." That got Wolfe's eyebrows twitching. "Mine, too." "Indeed," he said. "And was he?" She inhaled through her nose, slow and measured. "He died 2 years ago in London. A heart attack, they said." I scribbled it in my notebook. "So the question is whether he's dead, murdered, or dead again. We've had stranger." Her eyes darted toward me, then back to Wolfe. "I don't want the police. I just need to know the truth." "Why?" Wolfe asked. "If he is dead, Your curiosity will not revive him. If he lives, your knowledge may endanger you." She hesitated. "Because someone wants me to believe otherwise." "I began receiving calls last month. No voice, only silence. Then this letter." Wolfe regarded her the way a python studies dinner. "Your husband's occupation?" "Investment broker. European markets. He travelled often. We were distant." "Finances?" "Comfortable. Enemies?" A pause. "He had associates. I never cared for them." Wolfe closed his eyes, which meant he was thinking or napping. With him, same thing. "You will leave the envelope with me. Mr. Goodwin will obtain particulars, addresses, acquaintances, etc. My fee is 2,000 payable upon engagement." She nodded and reached for her checkbook. I liked her already. When she left, the room smelled faintly of her perfume, something French, expensive, and complicated. I locked the blue envelope in Wolfe's desk drawer and waited for his verdict. He opened his eyes and reached for a bottle of beer. "The handwriting, Archie?" "Tidy, expensive paper, postmark Midtown, no fingerprints but hers." "Excellent. A prank perhaps, but not a cheap one. Tomorrow you will verify the death of Mr. Walter Colburn, Registrar's Office, London, also his banker, lawyer, and any tailor extravagant enough to keep records." I grinned. "You think he's alive?" He sipped. "I think if he is not, he was inconvenient to someone who preferred him so. And if he is alive, he will be equally inconvenient to someone else. Either way, we shall be paid for our inconvenience." "Sounds like a plan," I said. "You sure you don't want to stretch those legs and help me look?" He gave me the kind of look that could wilt steel. "Archie, if I ever stretch my legs outside this house, the world will mistake it for an earthquake." I saluted and went to call Lon Cohen at the Gazette for background on the Colburns. He owed me 3 favors and a dinner. By evening I had enough dirt to fill a flower pot. Walter Colburn, mid-40s, born in Boston, made a fortune moving other people's money. In 1948 he relocated to London for tax reasons, which in English means to avoid trouble. Died in 1950 at the Dorchester Hotel, sudden cardiac failure. No autopsy, cremated 2 days later. Ashes sent home to the widow. Nice, neat, tidy, and suspicious as a too-clean window. I handed the summary to Wolfe after dinner. He listened, eyes half closed, breathing like a distant storm. He said finally. "A man who dies abroad, a wife who doubts belatedly, and an anonymous correspondent. Very well, proceed." "Proceed how?" "By morning you will visit her banker. Ask about her husband's accounts. Discretion, Archie." "When have I ever lacked discretion?" He groaned. "Frequently, but I trust your instincts more than my own legs. Go." The next day started with a cab ride through drizzle and ended with more questions than answers. The banker confirmed that Walter Colburn had withdrawn $500,000 in cash the week before his death. No one knew why. The lawyer refused to talk, which told me he had something to hide. The tailor, a chatty Italian, mentioned a man who'd come for fittings around that time, claiming to be Colburn's cousin, but using the same measurements. When I got back, Wolfe was behind his desk with another beer and the air of a man waiting for dessert. So, I said, "your corpse was generous before he croaked. $500,000 walked off in cash, and someone in London was wearing his suits." That got him. He straightened, which for Wolfe is like another man doing a backflip. "Indeed, a counterfeit corpse, perhaps. How droll." He rose, which meant the case had officially entered his bloodstream. "Archie, tomorrow you will telephone London again, confirm whether ashes were truly shipped, also whether the death certificate bears official seal or imitation. People forge deaths as they forge art. Poorly, if you know where to look." "Fine," I said, "but before I spend more hours on transatlantic calls, you might want to know. Mrs. Colburn just phoned. Someone broke into her apartment last night. He frowned. Stolen? Only one thing, the urn with her husband's ashes. Wolfe's eyes gleamed, slow and dangerous. Ah, how admirably macabre. The plot thickens, Archie. Kindly fetch me another beer. I believe we have earned it. I did, and as he poured, I couldn't help thinking, when a man who hates motion starts to enjoy it, someone somewhere is about to get buried. Again. Chapter 2. The Man Who Should Have Been Dead. Wednesday dawned like a bad habit. Grey, wet, and entirely unnecessary. I was in the office early running through Wolfe's to-do list, which is my polite way of saying my list. Wolfe's lists consist of one item: sit, think, and drink beer. By 9:30, he was already in his chair, robe as regal as ever, scanning the morning paper like it had personally offended him. The blue envelope still sat in his desk drawer, sealed, silent, and smug. "Archie," he said without looking up, "have you confirmed the cremation?" "I have. London says the ashes were shipped via transatlantic courier. Name of the carrier, Paragon Freight. Signed for in New York by a Mr. A.C. Farnham, who incidentally does not exist." He lifted one brow, small movement, big meaning. "Farnham? Fake. The address on file is a post office box near Lexington Avenue. No one's ever heard of him. If those ashes ever made it across the ocean, they took the scenic route." Wolfe grunted, a low rumble of appreciation. "A dead man whose ashes are mislaid? How civilized." "Sure," I said, "like a polite ghost." He gave me a look sharp enough to cut paper. "Spare me your metaphors. Call Mrs. Colburn. Tell her I require the serial number of the urn." Because, he said, leaning back, "I suspect the urn may contain more than ashes." I phoned Mrs. Colburn, who sounded like she hadn't slept since the break-in. "The urn was bronze, small, no markings," she said. "It was on my mantel when I went to bed. In the morning, it was gone. They didn't take the jewelry, the silver, nothing else." "Any idea who might want a second-hand urn?" I asked. "None," she said faintly. "But last night someone called again." I answered, and they whispered, "He's coming back." Then they hung up. "Nice bedtime story," I said. "Keep your door locked and your phone closed. We'll be in touch." When I hung up, Wolfe was glaring at me like I'd just interrupted a sermon. "She is frightened?" "Half to death." "Good. Fear sharpens the tongue. We may yet get something honest from her." At noon, Wolfe sent me out to chase ghosts, starting with Paragon Freight. The office was on a narrow block near the river, a long room full of cigarette smoke, typewriters, and suspicion. A clerk with a face like a spatula checked his files. "Colburn, Walter?" I asked. He frowned. "No shipment under that name, but we did have a package 2 years back marked Private Remains. Sender's name unreadable. Paid cash. Picked up same day by courier. No forwarding." "Who signed?" He shrugged. "Some guy, tall, grey suit, wore gloves. We get hundreds like that." That didn't help, but his memory for suits told me something. People remember what interests them, and this man had noticed too much to be innocent. I thanked him, slipped him a 5, and walked out into the drizzle. A block away, I ducked into a phone booth and called Lon Cohen at the Gazette. "Lon," I said, "run me an obituary check on Walter Colburn, 1950, London, and see if you can dig up a passenger list for the week after he supposedly died." Lon chuckled. "Sounds like you're chasing a live one, Archie." "Or a twice-dead one," I said. By 4 o'clock I was back at the brownstone. Wolfe hadn't moved an inch, though the beer count was down by 2. "Progress?" he asked. "Plenty of smoke? No fire. Freight company's file stinks. The ashes may never have existed. And guess what? Your dead man had company on a plane out of Heathrow 3 days after his funeral. Passenger name W. Colburn, missing the U. Wolfe's eyes half closed. Delightful. The absence of a vowel has seldom carried such weight. Meaning? Meaning our corpse bought a ticket under an alias even an idiot could trace. That suggests arrogance or confidence in protection. Protection from who? He tapped his fingers together. From whoever wanted him dead, naturally. Perhaps his death was arranged by consent. $500,000 in cash purchases, many silences. Or maybe he just wanted out, I said. New life, new name. Wolfe snorted. Men who wish to disappear seldom write letters to their widows. No, Archie. Someone is staging his resurrection. At 6, the bell rang again. I opened the door to find Inspector Kramer filling the frame like a municipal storm. "Where's Wolfe?" he barked. "Where he always is, anchored to that chair. You'll need a crane if you plan to move him." Kramer pushed past me, coat dripping, cigar clenched. "You and your boss have been nosing into a dead man's business. Well, he's not so dead anymore." Wolfe looked up, unimpressed. "I was about to pour my beer, Inspector. Kindly don't sour it." Kramer slapped a newspaper on the desk. The headline screamed, "Walter Colburn alive, seen in Midtown Hotel." "Room 614, Franklin Hotel," Kramer growled. "Checked in yesterday under his own name. We found out an hour ago." Wolfe leaned forward slightly, his equivalent of fainting from shock. "Marvelous!" Kramer scowled. "I'm warning you, Wolfe. Stay out of this one. It's police business." "Inspector," Wolfe said sweetly, "if Providence has returned a man from the dead, it would be impolite not to investigate." Kramer muttered something about ulcers and left. Wolfe turned to me. "Archie, go see this apparition. If he breathes, speak. If he doesn't, observe. And do try to avoid being arrested." "Sure," I said. "I'll bring him back if he's talkative." The Franklin Hotel was a tired piece of architecture, wedged between two newer buildings trying to forget it existed. The night clerk gave me the kind of look you reserve for door-to-door preachers, but handed me the key to room 614 after I showed my license. The hallway smelled like old cigars and wet carpet. I knocked once. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. I tried the handle. It turned. The room was dim. One lamp, burning low. The bed looked used. The man lying across it looked worse. Mid-40s, grey hair, neat suit. His face was familiar from the photo I'd found in Colburn's file. Only difference. This version wasn't breathing. A gun lay on the floor and next to it another blue envelope. I stepped closer. The note inside read, "You should have stayed dead." That's when the door behind me creaked. I spun, gun ready, but the hallway was empty. Whoever left the note had taken the fast way out. I did what any sensible man would. Called Kramer, then Wolfe. "Report," Wolfe said. "He's dead all right," I told him. "And this time, no doctor's going to sign a fake certificate. Someone wanted him to stop auditioning for Resurrection." A long pause. "Excellent," Wolfe said finally. "Return at once." "Excellent," I said. "A man gets murdered twice and you call it excellent?" "Yes, because now it's a proper case. Bring the envelope." I pocketed the note, gave the room one last look, and left before the cops could clutter the place with opinions. Back at the brownstone, Wolfe sat in the same position, as if he'd been waiting for news from another planet. I handed him the envelope. He read the note, then smiled faintly. So he was warned, and he ignored it. Foolish. Yeah, well, he's not ignoring much now. He looked at me over the rim of his glass. "Archie, you may inform Mrs. Colburn that her husband has been found dead. That'll be a fun call." "She will come here tomorrow at 10, Wolfe said. "Bring tissues. Women prefer to weep indoors." As I filed the report, the city outside went on with its usual racket. Horns, sirens, rain against glare. Inside it was just Wolfe, his beer and me. He spoke without looking up. I suspect the man never left New York at all. The ashes were bait. The death, artifice. Someone's performance was too convincing. I nodded. And now? Now, he said, closing his eyes, we wait for the next lie. Chapter 3. A Death Resurrected. Thursday started out like it had been tailored for bad news. The sky over Manhattan looked like old tin, and the radio in the kitchen was giving the weather that special optimism only meteorologists can fake. Fritz was humming over breakfast preparations, which meant something edible was on its way. Wolfe was already in his chair, coffee in reach, his eyes half-lidded like a cat, in no mood for conversation. The newspaper on his desk featured the late, great Walter Colburn on the front page again. This time, properly dead. The headline was blunt enough to please Kramer. Fake death ends in real murder. Archie, Wolfe said without looking up, do you find the inspector's headlines as tasteless as his cigars? Depends, I said. Which one burns slower? He made a sound that was halfway between a grunt and a sigh. We must now consider why a man would fake death, resurrect himself, and then get it right the second time. I'd say practice, I said. He ignored that. The woman will arrive at 10, right on schedule unless she's busy screaming. At 10, sharp, Mrs. Colburn swept in, looking like grief had gone out of style, but she was wearing it anyway. Her dress was black, her perfume the same as before. Something delicate that made you wonder how much it cost to smell like regret. I saw the papers, she said, voice tight. I need to know if it's true. Is my husband? Yes, Wolfe interrupted. He is quite deceased, this time permanently. She sat down, face pale, eyes focused on the orchid behind Wolfe rather than the man himself. Then who sent that letter? Who told me he was murdered? That, madam, Wolfe said, is the question that keeps you useful. Her chin lifted. You think I'm lying? Wolfe's tone was lazy silk. I think you are selective with truth, but I am not yet certain which parts you find inconvenient. She flushed, started to rise, then sat back down again. That's the effect Wolfe has on people. He's like gravity, impossible to fight without looking foolish. After she left, Wolfe spent the next hour doing what he does best, nothing that looks like work. Then suddenly he told me to get Kramer on the line. Tell him, Wolfe said, that he may bring his cigar and his impatience. We will receive him at 4. Kramer arrived at 4:30, which for him was practically early. He didn't sit, he prowled. You dragged me here, Wolfe. You got something or just another lecture? I have an observation, Wolfe said. Mr. Colburn died twice, both times conveniently close to a financial transaction. Before his first death, he withdrew $500,000. Before his second, he contacted his insurance broker. You see the symmetry? Kramer puffed smoke. I see you trying to make murder sound poetic. Then you are improving, Wolfe said. I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. Kramer glared. For the record, we've checked the hotel. No prints, but Colburn's and yours. The gun was his. The door was locked from inside. Looks like suicide. Pfui, Wolfe said. A man who fakes his death does not choose an encore that way. Someone helped him die again, neatly. Kramer pointed his cigar at me. You were there. You see anyone? Only a corpse with bad timing, I said. Then stay out of my way, Kramer snapped. If you find anything, don't sit on it. He left a trail of smoke and suspicion behind him. Wolfe poured himself another beer. Archie, he said, there is something about this man's second death that pleases me. Glad it makes one of us happy, I said. What's the angle? The same as always, Wolfe murmured. Greed. But I wish to know whose. That night, Wolfe surprised me by telling me to dress respectably. That usually means someone rich or dangerous, or both, is coming. At 8:30, the bell rang. I opened the door to a man who looked like he'd been born in a suit. Mid-50s, lean, smooth voice and smile you could measure in stock dividends. "Mr. Goodwin," he said, "I'm Frederick Hume. I represent Mrs. Colburn's late husband's firm." "Congratulations," I said. "That's quite a title." He smiled thinly. "You're charming, but I'll see Mr. Wolfe." I took him in. Wolfe gave him a nod that might have been hello. "Mr. Hume," Wolfe said, "you are here because you wish to manage damage. Your firm insured Mr. Colburn's life for $2 million, did it not?" Hume blinked once, slowly. "You've done your homework." "I employ Mr. Goodwin," Wolfe said. "That suffices." Hume sat. The policy was paid to Mrs. Colburn after his death. Now, with his resurrection, the company is facing questions. My job is to ensure the truth is orderly. "Orderly?" Wolfe repeated. "A polite synonym for concealed." "I prefer managed," Hume said smoothly. Wolfe's mouth curved slightly. "And if the truth refuses management?" Hume's eyes cooled. "Then it becomes dangerous to everyone involved." That earned him a full stare from Wolfe. Few men survive that with dignity. "You imply threats, sir? Do refrain. Mr. Goodwin finds them tiresome." "Sure," I said. "I usually nap through them." Hume rose, still smiling. "Just a word of advice, Mr. Wolfe. Let sleeping ghosts stay dead." "Advice noted," Wolfe said. "Now kindly remove yourself." He did, leaving behind the faint scent of expensive fear. When the door shut, I asked, "You buying his act?" "Not entirely," Wolfe said, "but he told us something without meaning to." "Which is?" "That his company stands to lose millions if Walter Colburn's death proves fraudulent. And that means someone, perhaps within that company, had every reason to make the second death genuine." He leaned back, eyes half closed again. "Tomorrow, Archie, you will visit Hume's office. You will be irritating. It suits you." Always nice to be appreciated. The next morning, the weather cleared enough to make Manhattan look almost honest. I took a cab downtown to Hume's office, a marble and mahogany operation that smelled of disinfected money. His secretary was a redhead with a filing system that included eyelashes. "Mr. Hume's not in," she said, smiling just enough to soften the lie. "No problem," I said. "Tell him Archie Goodwin stopped by to check whether his ghosts have insurance coverage." She laughed politely, but her eyes flicked toward a door marked private. That was enough. I thanked her and left, then doubled back an hour later. The office lights were still on. Hume was inside, pacing, phone pressed to his ear. Through the frosted glass, I caught one phrase. "No, she doesn't know yet. She can't." He hung up, yanked open a drawer, and pulled out a small blue envelope. My cue. I stepped inside. "Evening, Mr. Hume. Writing fan mail?" He froze, the envelope half hidden. Then he smiled, the kind of smile that should come with an apology. "Mr. Goodwin, you should knock." "I like surprises," I said. "What's in the envelope?" "Company documents." "Sure," I said. "Blue ones? You planning another resurrection?" He didn't answer. His hand moved toward the drawer again. I didn't wait to find out why. My hand moved faster. The next sound was his desk lamp hitting the floor and Hume gasping for air. When he straightened, he looked like he'd swallowed a confession. "You have no idea what you're meddling with," he said. "Maybe not," I said, "but Wolfe will." Back at the brownstone, I dropped the blue envelope on Wolfe's desk. He opened it, scanned the single sheet inside, and said softly, "Excellent." I leaned over his shoulder. The message read, "Payment completed. The widow must not suspect." I whistled. "Guess the ghosts have payroll." "Yes," Wolfe said, "and I believe we've just found their accountant." Chapter 4. Suspects in Concert. Friday came in humming a tune of city traffic and light rain. A New York morning that made even the pigeons look undecided about flying. Wolfe was where he always was, in his chair, drinking beer for breakfast and pretending that gravity was a virtue. The blue envelope from Hume's office sat on his desk like a royal decree. I was itching to open it again, but Wolfe had declared it in repose, which is Wolfe speak for don't touch my toys. "Archie," he said without looking up from the newspaper, "the phrase payment completed implies two things. A transaction and an expectation. We must identify both." "Sure," I said. "I'll just phone up the ghost of Walter Colburn and ask who paid for his resurrection." Wolfe gave me the kind of glare that could turn beer flat. Sarcasm, though a native talent, is seldom constructive. "You will visit Hume's office again today. Speak with his employees. Charm them if you must. Their tongues will wag faster than their brains." Always happy to spread sunshine. The insurance firm's lobby looked busier than Grand Central, and half as honest. Hume's secretary, the redhead from yesterday, gave me a look that could have melted butter and then frozen it again. "Mr. Goodwin?" she said coolly. "Mr. Hume isn't in today." "Sure he isn't. Maybe he's out buying more blue envelopes." Her eyes narrowed. "You have quite an imagination." "It's my best feature," I said. "Mind if I use the other one?" "Curiosity?" She sighed and motioned to a corner chair. "You can wait, but he's at a meeting downtown." While she pretended to type, I took in the office decor, photos of yachts, golf trophies, and one framed letter from a London underwriter dated last year. The signature looked familiar, the same sweeping W as on the document Wolfe had read. I filed that in the back of my head for later. At 11, a man came out of Hume's private office. Late 30s, tidy suit, eyes like polished brass. He spotted me, frowned, and made a detour to the elevator. "Friend of yours?" I asked the redhead. She hesitated a beat too long. "That's Mr. Talbot. He's in accounting." "Does he handle client payouts?" Her lips thinned. "You should ask Mr. Hume." "I will," I said, and left before she could call security. When I got back to the brownstone, Wolfe was deep into a platter of Fritz's beef roulade, which meant interruptions were risky, but permitted if I valued life less than efficiency. "Hume's hiding behind a secretary with good taste and bad lies," I said. "And he's got a bean counter named Talbot, who twitched like a guilty cashier when he saw me." Wolfe chewed, swallowed, and nodded. "Talbot. Yes, I recall the name from the firm's filings. He processed the payout for Mrs. Colburn. Have him investigated." "By whom? We don't keep a tail on retainer." "Use Saul Panzer," Wolfe said. "He's competent. Tell him to follow Talbot discreetly. If Talbot sneezes, I want to know whether it was in cash or conscience." That afternoon, Saul checked in by phone. "Talbot left the office around 2, he said. Met someone at a diner on 43rd. Short man, tan suit, foreign accent. They talked for 10 minutes. Talbot handed him an envelope. Then both left in opposite directions. Follow either of them?" "The short man, he went to the train terminal and bought a ticket for Philadelphia, then vanished." "Great," I said. "Let me guess. Fake name?" "Mr. Parker." I hung up and reported to Wolfe, who looked far too pleased. "So," he said, "a courier. Excellent." "Excellent? The guy's gone." "Precisely, which means whatever he carried was meant to disappear." At 6 o'clock, Wolfe called Hume's office himself. A rare event that made even me sit up. His tone was sugar-coated poison. "Mr. Hume," he said, "I must see you this evening at 8. No, not tomorrow. Tonight. I detest waiting for liars to tidy their stories." He hung up before Hume could respond. At 8 sharp, the man arrived. This time he looked less like a banker and more like someone who'd slept with his guilt. His tie was crooked, and his confidence had taken a beating. "You're persistent," he said, as I let him in, That's the job description, I said. Wolfe didn't offer him a seat. Mr. Hume, he began, you sent money out of the country yesterday. To whom? Hume blinked. That's absurd. Is it? Wolfe leaned forward slightly. You may as well answer, for I already know. You paid someone to remove evidence of your company's complicity in Walter Colburn's first death. A courier took it south, perhaps to an accomplice who arranged the documents. Yes. Hume swallowed. You can't prove that. Pfui. Proof is for juries. I require logic. You fear exposure. You and your partners defrauded your own firm through the Colburn policy, staging his death, claiming the payout, then dividing the proceeds. But you underestimated him. He wanted more. Hume's face turned the colour of chalk. That's insane. Then why? Wolfe said softly. Was he shot in a hotel registered under his real name? Who else but you would benefit from ensuring he stayed dead? Hume stood abruptly. This is harassment. I'm leaving. Wolfe waved him off. Do, but know this. I've already spoken with your clerk, Miss Dane. That froze him. What did she say? That she witnessed you retrieving forged policy documents from your safe. She's on her way here now. He went still as glass, then bolted for the door. I moved faster, 2 steps, and I had him by the collar. He struggled, then slumped, defeated. 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang again. Miss Dane entered, the secretary, nervous, eyes wide. Mr. Wolfe, I didn't want to get involved, but Mr. Hume told me to destroy some records. When I refused, he said I'd be sorry. Then he disappeared for an hour and came back, shaking. Did he mention Walter Colburn? Wolfe asked. Yes, she said. He said Colburn was threatening to expose him, that everything was falling apart. Kramer's timing, as usual, was suspiciously perfect. He stormed in just as Hume was regaining colour. What now, Wolfe? You trapping my suspects again? Wolfe gestured lazily toward Hume. Inspector, your suspect was preparing to flee. You may now arrest him for conspiracy and quite possibly murder. Kramer's grin was pure satisfaction. For once, you and I agree. Hume glared. You can't prove I killed him? Kramer shrugged. Maybe not yet, but we'll see how you sing downtown. They left with him between them like a reluctant parade. After the door closed, I exhaled. That wraps it up, right? Not entirely, Wolfe said. Something remains unsaid. Such as? The courier, the envelope, the phrase, payment completed. If Hume paid for silence, whose silence was worth so much? I frowned. Maybe his partner's, or maybe someone closer. Wolfe nodded slowly. Yes, Mrs. Colburn, perhaps. Tomorrow she returns. He leaned back, eyes half closed again. Prepare the office, Archie. We are nearing the coda. Chapter 5. Strings of Deceit. Saturday morning was one of those days when even the sunlight looked suspicious. It slanted through the blinds like it was spying for the opposition. Wolfe had already declared it a day for patience, which usually meant I was going to do all the running while he sat and did all the thinking. The blue envelope was still on his desk, as smug as ever. Kramer had taken Hume downtown for a long conversation and short temper. Mrs. Colburn was due at 10, which gave me an hour to wonder why rich widows always chose Wolfe's office to unburden their consciences. Maybe it was the leather chairs. Fritz brought in breakfast. Wolfe had eggs, ham and beer. I had coffee, which he calls an infantile beverage. We were halfway through the morning routine when the doorbell rang. I got it. Mrs. Colburn stepped in, draped in black again, though I suspected it was less grief and more wardrobe coordination. She looked tired, pale, and expensive. Mr. Wolfe, she said, voice soft but steady. The police were here this morning. They asked questions about my husband's business. I told them I knew nothing. You're telling me the truth? Wolfe asked. Her chin lifted. Would lying help me? It rarely helps anyone, Wolfe said. But most try anyway. She sighed and sat. Inspector Kramer said you told him my husband faked his own death. That's impossible. Not at all, Wolfe replied. It is merely expensive. I took out my notebook. Mrs. Colburn, did your husband ever mention a Frederick Hume? Her eyes flickered. Yes, he handled our insurance policy. Did you know your husband was insured for $2 million? Wolfe asked. Of course. And that the money was paid to you after his supposed death? Yes. I used part of it to settle his debts. Wolfe's tone stayed smooth. Then you must also know that Hume was arrested last night for conspiracy. She gasped, a small, sharp sound. Conspiracy? To what? To make your husband's fake death profitable, Wolfe said, and possibly to ensure that his real one remained permanent. Her hands tightened in her lap. Are you saying I'm involved? I am saying you were convenient, Wolfe murmured. Men like Hume always need a respectable woman to anchor their schemes. After she left, Wolfe closed his eyes and leaned back. Archie observed that she did not ask how her husband died the second time. She already knew? Precisely. A guilty woman worries about discovery, not detail. Call Saul Panzer, have him find any connection between Mrs. Colburn and Hume outside of business. Such as? Phone calls, meetings, shared accounts, whatever turns up. Saul's efficiency could make clocks jealous. By evening, he was back with results. They met twice last month, he said. At a restaurant on Madison, no one else with them. The waiter remembers she paid the bill. Good, Wolfe said. And the second meeting? 3 nights ago, Saul replied. The night before Colburn's second death. That hung in the air like smoke. Wolfe smiled faintly. Archie, kindly fetch Inspector Kramer. Tell him to bring his patients. We may have another guest for him to escort downtown. Kramer arrived after dark, shoulders dusted with rain and attitude. What now, Wolfe? Another theory? Not theory, Wolfe said. Clarity. Kramer dropped into his usual chair. Fine, enlighten me. Your suspect, Hume, conspired with the deceased to stage a fraudulent death. When Colburn returned to demand his share, Hume obliged him with real death, but who lured him to that hotel under his own name, who delivered him to his murderer? Kramer frowned. You're saying the wife set him up? Wolfe nodded once. She had motive. The money was hers to lose if the fraud surfaced. She arranged the meeting between her husband and Hume under the pretext of reconciliation. She knew Hume would not forgive Colburn's greed. That's a guess, Kramer said. Fee, it's arithmetic. Wolfe pointed to the blue envelope. That phrase, payment completed, was not Hume's note to his accomplice. It was Mrs. Colburn's signal to him. She paid him for finality. Kramer stared. You're saying she hired him to kill her own husband? I am saying, Wolfe said, that she invested in permanence. Kramer's face darkened. You've got evidence? Indirect, Wolfe said. Archie? I pulled out a slip of paper Saul had found, a withdrawal record from Mrs. Colburn's account 2 days before the murder. $50,000 cash. Small change, I said, but enough to buy a quiet crime. Kramer stood. I'll bring her in. No, Wolfe said. Bring her here. I prefer to finish properly. At 9, Mrs. Colburn returned, escorted by Kramer and flanked by nerves. She looked around the office as if the orchids might judge her. Wolfe didn't rise. He simply gestured to the chair opposite his desk. Madam, he said, you may as well sit. Pretending innocence while standing is exhausting. She sat slowly. I don't understand. Wolfe's voice stayed gentle. You hired Frederick Hume to ensure your husband's first death stayed undisturbed, but he was greedy, as men of that type are. When your husband returned, alive and inconvenient, you arranged a meeting. You sent Hume payment. $50,000. He killed Walter Colburn, then tried to run. Her lips trembled. That's a lie. Kramer snorted. Then why the cash, lady? For charity, she said quickly. Wolfe raised a finger. No, madam, for convenience. You are intelligent, capable, and I dare say ruthless. A husband's death gave you wealth. His resurrection threatened exposure. You bought silence. Unfortunately, silence, once purchased, tends to speak again. Her face went white. You can't prove anything. Wolfe sighed. Proof is the inspector's department. Truth is mine. Kramer stepped forward, handcuffs glinting. That's good enough for me. She rose, shaking. You smug, horrible man. Wolfe nodded mildly. I have been accused of worse, madam. Archie, the door. I opened it. She swept out, the scent of her perfume lingering behind like a final denial. When the room was quiet again, Wolfe leaned back and closed his eyes. A pity, he said. She possessed remarkable composure. It will not survive trial. I sat on the edge of my desk. So that's it? Case closed? For now, Wolfe said. Until another envelope arrives. He reached for his beer, tilted it toward the light, and said, almost to himself, There's always another envelope. Chapter 6. Motive in reprise. Sunday mornings in Manhattan are supposed to be quiet, but the brownstone hadn't learned that rule. Wolfe was awake early, which for him meant before noon, and the sound of his voice drifting from the kitchen was as unnatural as snow in July. He was instructing Fritz on how to fry bacon without indignity. When I came in, coffee in hand, he was already at his desk, the orchids banished for the day, and the air thick with something that wasn't quite satisfaction. Archie, he said, Kramer called an hour ago. Before breakfast, he must be in love. He reports that Mrs. Colburn has confessed. That made me pause. Just like that? Not entirely. He applied the traditional police method, lengthy interrogation in an uncomfortable chair. She admitted paying Hume $50,000. To kill her husband? No. To retrieve a set of documents. The details remain murky. He wishes to see me. Imagine that, I said. The man finally realized you're useful. Wolfe ignored pain. We shall indulge him. Kramer will arrive at 11. Prepare the office. By 11, Kramer filled the doorway like a storm front. He looked less angry than usual, which worried me more. Wolfe, he said, your lady confessed all right, but it's not the story you sold me. Ah. Wolfe gestured toward a chair. Do enlighten us. Kramer sat, hat on his knee. She admits paying Hume, yes, but claims it wasn't for murder. Says her husband had been blackmailing her. The documents he threatened to expose were letters, her letters, to another man. I let out a low whistle. The plot thickens and loses class. She says Hume promised to buy them back. Instead, he used the deal to set up Colburn's killing. Wolfe's fingers steepled. Intriguing. You believe her? Kramer scowled. I don't believe anyone until a jury does, but we found the letters. In Hume's safe. Same stationery, same handwriting, they were real. Then she speaks truth, or at least a portion of it, Wolfe murmured. Hume exploited her. He accepted payment, killed her husband, and kept the letters as leverage. Kramer shrugged. He's not talking. Claims he acted alone, but there's something off. We found a second set of fingerprints on the envelope with the message, payment completed. Not hers, not his. Whose then? That's why I'm here, Kramer said. You and your assistant have a gift for trouble. Use it. When he left, Wolfe stared into space for a good 5 minutes. I've learned not to interrupt when he's in that mode. It's like poking a sleeping bear with a stick. Finally, he said, Archie, those letters. How convenient that they surface now. Too convenient. You think she planted them? Perhaps, or someone else did, to protect her? Protect her? She's already confessed. Confession is a shield, not a sword. Wolfe said. It distracts from deeper guilt. We must determine whose. That afternoon, Saul Panzer came by with a report. I've been shadowing one of Hume's clerks, a fellow named Talbot, the one Archie spotted earlier. He's been visiting a law office downtown under another name, Thomas Reed. The firm handles trusts and overseas transfers. Wolfe's eyes opened fully. Ah, that explains the missing $500,000 from Colburn's withdrawal. The money was hidden in a foreign account waiting for collection. Saul nodded. Reed's been moving funds again this week? Quietly. Wolfe's smile was small but sharp. He collects his due. But why now unless someone signaled him that the game was finished? I said, "You think he's part of the fraud?" "I think he's the hand that never stopped moving," Wolfe replied. "Have him watched. If he attempts travel, inform me immediately." Saul nodded and vanished into the rain. By evening, the house had settled into that deceptive peace that always comes right before a storm. Wolfe had his beer, I had my typewriter, and for a few hours it almost felt like an ordinary day until the phone rang. It was Kramer. His voice had the rough edge that means bad news. "Wolfe, your accountant friend Talbot, he's dead." Wolfe stiffened. "Explain." "Found in his office. Gunshot to the chest. No witnesses, no sign of robbery. One thing though, the safe's open. Empty." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "When?" "An hour ago. We're dusting for prints, but I figured you'd want the headline." "I do," Wolfe said quietly. "Thank you." He hung up and looked at me. "Archie, we are no longer chasing fraud. We are chasing self-preservation." Monday morning brought more rain and one unexpected guest. Fritz answered the bell, then came in looking uneasy. "A lady to see you, Mr. Wolfe. She says it's urgent." It was Harriet Dane, the red-headed secretary from Hume's office. She looked different now, less lipstick, more panic. "I know I shouldn't be here," she said, "but I had to tell someone. Mr. Talbot called me yesterday. He said if anything happened to him I should bring this." She held out, what else? A blue envelope. Wolfe took it carefully, opened it, and read aloud. "If I am gone, look to the widow. She knows where the money sleeps." He looked up, expression unreadable. "Miss Dane, where did he keep his records?" "In the company vault, but after Hume's arrest, Mrs. Colburn visited the office. She said it was to retrieve personal files. I didn't think—" "Of course you didn't," Wolfe said. "That's why we have police." She bit her lip. "You think she killed him too?" Wolfe exhaled slowly. "If she did, it was not with her own hand. Mrs. Colburn is many things, but impulsive is not one of them." I said, "So who's doing her dirty work?" "Someone loyal," Wolfe murmured. "Someone indebted, perhaps someone who loved her." He turned to me. "Archie, fetch Inspector Kramer and have Miss Dane remain. She may enjoy a second round of enlightenment." Kramer arrived with his usual orchestra of irritation. "Another blue envelope?" he barked. "Indeed," Wolfe said. "This one names your next corpse's murderer." "Who?" "The same woman who already confessed," Wolfe said. "But she had help. Talbot discovered her connection to the missing funds and threatened exposure. She silenced him through her agent." "Her agent?" "Yes," Wolfe said softly. "Mr. Reed, the false name Talbot used. There was no Reed. It was her chauffeur, William Nash. He managed her accounts abroad. Find him before he leaves the country." Kramer frowned. "You sure?" "As sure as I am that you'll complain afterward." That night, we waited. The rain kept tapping the windows, steady as a metronome. Wolfe sat silent, eyes closed, hands folded, looking like a priest awaiting confession. At 9, the phone rang again. Kramer's voice came through, triumphant. "You were right. Nash tried to board a ship under a fake passport, had 10,000 in cash and Colburn's missing documents. He says Mrs. Colburn told him to finish the job." Wolfe allowed himself a smile. "Excellent. Justice, though late, has a fine sense of timing. When he hung up, the office was quiet again. Wolfe leaned back, reached for his beer and said, "Archie, you may record the case is closed. A pity. It had promise." "Promise of what?" I asked. "Elegance," he said. "But greed rarely ends with grace." I closed my notebook and stood. "You know, one of these days, someone's going to send us a blue envelope that just says thank you." Wolfe snorted. "When that happens, Archie, we shall both retire." Chapter 7. The Hidden Account. Monday night bled into Tuesday with the rain still stubborn over Manhattan, and Wolfe was still planted behind his desk like a redwood. Kramer's last call had wrapped the case neatly enough for headlines, but I knew that look in Wolfe's eyes, the one that meant he smelled an unswept corner under a polished floor. When I came in, he was sipping beer and watching the condensation slide down the glass as though it contained philosophy. "Archie," he said without looking up, "I dislike incomplete endings." "You and every editor in town," I said. "Kramer's got his killer, the chauffeur's talking, and the lady's locked up. What's left?" "Motivation," he said. "Money is too vulgar for such intricate deceit. There was intelligence behind it, not merely greed." Maybe Colburn himself was the brains. He built the scheme, faked his death, blackmailed his wife, got shot for his trouble. That's a full resume. He shook his head. No, the elegance was elsewhere. Someone anticipated every turn, including his return. We have not yet met the composer of this symphony. Before I could ask, Fritz appeared in the doorway with the morning mail. Wolfe waved him away, then opened a small registered envelope addressed to Nero Wolfe, Esquire, in tidy type. Inside was a single note, unsigned. "The money isn't hers. Look beneath the false name in Zurich." "Another admirer?" I said. Wolfe's eyes gleamed, or a participant with remorse. By noon, he had me on the phone to every bank in Switzerland willing to acknowledge a voice from New York. It took 6 calls, 2 transatlantic operators, and a level of charm that could polish brass, but I got it. An account opened 5 years ago under the name A. Farnham, the same alias used for the urn delivery. The balance? Over $600,000. The signature? Walter Colburn, I reported back, and Wolfe's reaction was almost enthusiasm. Excellent. The dead man was cleverer than his murderers. He hid his fortune abroad before staging his death. So the $500,000 wasn't missing, it was waiting for him, I said. Indeed. The wife, the insurer, and the accomplices all believed they were using him. In truth, he was preparing to abscond with everything. Except, I said, he didn't count on dying twice. Wolfe gave a single nod. An error of trust, no doubt. But the question remains, who sent this message? The bell rang at 3. Fritz ushered in Harriet Dane, the red-headed secretary from Hume's office, looking less like a witness now and more like a woman carrying something heavy she was tired of. "I shouldn't have come," she said. "The police told me to stay out of it." "That advice was wasted," Wolfe said. "You bring news?" She nodded, clutching her purse. "Mr. Nash, the chauffeur, he wasn't working alone. He was following instructions from someone else. He called me yesterday before his arrest and said, 'Tell Wolfe about Zurich.'" Then the line went dead. Wolfe gestured to a chair. "You already have." She sat, voice trembling. "I think Walter Colburn knew he was going to die. He told me once, months before he came back, that if anything happened to him, the key was in the music." I blinked. "The music?" "Yes. He was a pianist. There's a safe built into his old piano hidden behind the keyboard. He kept papers there. I don't know what." Wolfe's eyes half closed. "Archie, go to the Colburn apartment. Retrieve whatever lies in that instrument. Bring Saul if you expect trouble." The apartment on Park Avenue smelled like expensive dust. Saul picked the lock in under a minute. Inside, everything was museum neat, except for the piano, grand, black, and faintly out of tune. I lifted the lid and felt along the frame until my fingers brushed a false panel. A small lever gave, and a narrow compartment slid open. Inside were folded documents, yellowed at the edges, and a small metal key marked Z418. Saul whistled. "Looks like we found our encore." Back at the brownstone, Wolfe examined the papers. They were letters between Colburn and Hume, written before the first death. The content made even Wolfe's eyebrows twitch. "The plan proceeds. Once the funds are in Zurich, you'll declare me dead and claim the insurance. Divide the proceeds as arranged. Keep the account dormant for 3 years, then transfer to me under the new identity." "Lovely," I said. "They were partners?" "Precisely," Wolfe said. "Colburn created the fraud himself. Hume merely managed it. When Colburn returned to collect, Hume panicked, and Mrs. Colburn saw her chance to remove them both." I whistled. "A triangle with bullets and bankbooks." Wolfe smiled faintly. "A fugue, Archie. A composition of 3 voices, each thinking they lead." That evening, Kramer barged in again, still smelling of rain and police impatience. "You called me? This better be good." Wolfe handed him the letters. "Your case is now complete." The fraud began with the deceased. The wife killed to keep the proceeds, the chauffeur executed her will, and the man who thought himself a genius died of his own design. Kramer flipped through the papers, grunting. So the whole thing was a con that ate itself. "Succinctly," Wolfe said, "you may add that to your report." Kramer scowled. "I might even thank you someday." "Please don't," Wolfe said. "It would spoil my digestion." When the door closed, Wolfe leaned back with a sigh that sounded almost like satisfaction. "So the anonymous note? Who sent it?" I asked. Wolfe tilted his head toward the doorway. "Miss Dane, naturally. She feared she'd been complicit by ignorance and sought redemption. Her courage outpaced her wisdom." I nodded. "So the curtain finally drops?" "Indeed," Wolfe said. "An elegant score, each note played to its ruin." He reached for his final beer of the night, then added, almost absently, "File it under Colburn, Walter, the man who couldn't stay dead." Chapter 8. The Final Deduction. Tuesday night brought a rare stillness to the brownstone. The rain had stopped, the city hummed low and distant, and the orchids upstairs were probably the only living things in New York sleeping peacefully. Wolfe, of course, was awake. His version of insomnia looked like concentration. He sat behind his desk, a half-finished beer beside him, fingers steepled like a man praying to logic. "Archie," he said at last, "summon them." I had been waiting for that line all day. "All of them?" "All who remain, Mrs. Colburn, Miss Dane, and Inspector Kramer. The performance requires an audience." "Sure," I said. "Every good magician needs applause." By 9 o'clock, the office looked like a courtroom in miniature. Kramer stood near the window chewing on an unlit cigar, glowering at the carpet as if it owed him money. Miss Dane perched on the edge of the couch, nervous but curious. Then came Mrs. Colburn, escorted by a plainclothes officer, pale and poised, the way ice sometimes pretends to be glass. She looked around the room, then fixed Wolfe with that hard, practiced calm. "I was told you insisted on seeing me. I've already confessed." Wolfe inclined his head. "So you have. Unfortunately, you confessed to the wrong crime." Kramer made a noise like a man swallowing his pride. "Here we go." Wolfe ignored him. "Madam, you are intelligent, which makes your pretense tedious. You hired Frederick Hume to arrange your husband's disappearance?" "He did." "You inherited his money and his freedom. When your husband returned to reclaim both, you panicked, but you did not kill him. You are incapable of that kind of spontaneity." Her composure cracked just a fraction. Then who did? Wolfe turned to Kramer. Kindly release the good lady's chauffeur, William Nash. He acted on instruction, yes, but not hers. Kramer frowned. Then whose? Walter Colburn's, Wolfe said simply. That got silence. Even the orchids upstairs probably paused to listen. He continued, voice low and even, every syllable a nail in the coffin. Colburn was a planner. He staged his death, placed his fortune abroad, and left instructions with Nash to move the money once he returned. But when Hume began demanding a larger share, Colburn devised one final manipulation. He arranged his own murder, not literal suicide, but a death that would cement the fraud and remove every liability. Kramer's eyebrows shot up. You're telling me he hired his own killer? Exactly. He instructed Nash to stage a shooting at the hotel, making it appear he'd been silenced by his conspirators. Nash obeyed, but Colburn, ever cautious, kept evidence of his plan. The